días. Vamos a hacer este foro en 2 idiomas. Vamos a tocar ciertos temas que Javier quiere en español y, por supuesto, nuestros invitados, tanto David como IT, van a hablar en inglés. El tema es un poco las oportunidades de inversión en El Salvador y yo quisiera ampliarlo un poquito hacia Centroamérica. La verdad que estamos todos juntos en este barco y es bien importante el que lo veamos en conjunto, qué es lo que podemos hacer como región y qué es lo que tenemos que mejorar. Creo que cuando uno ve El Salvador muchas veces nos concentramos bastante en los problemas y en las desventajas que tenemos por diferentes razones y a veces perdemos un poco la visión de largo plazo. Y cuando estamos hablando aquí de 10 años y qué es lo que debemos de hacer hacia futuro, pues creo que es importante ver lo que está ocurriendo hoy en día porque hay mucho que corregir, pero también hay que ver el largo plazo y esto en un contexto mundial. Así que vamos a comenzar, si quieren, con Javier, para que nos dé un poco la visión del presidente de ASI y cómo él ve las oportunidades de inversión en El Salvador con esa visión, y luego vamos con David y con IT.
Thank you, Luis. I may be biased because I'm Salvadorian. I was born in El Salvador. I'll die in El Salvador. And we've been investing heavily in El Salvador, in our country, in our people. And we're trying to shape the future of our country through our work in the industrial association like Camtex and ASI. I really respect IT and Señor David because they chose to be here. They chose to invest in our country. They saw the good and the bad. And we have to make sure that we help them be successful. We have to make sure they are competitive. We have to make sure that they keep growing, that they expand, that they bring their customers and their suppliers to the region. There is a study from the World Association of Investment Promotion Agencies that says that 90% of new investments come from those initial investments made in the country. So if we want to bring new investment to El Salvador or to the region, we have to make sure that those who are already invested are happy, are successful, and that they keep growing. We see a lot of opportunities, not only in El Salvador, in the whole Central American region. We have winds in favor. We have fuel oil is down. Cotton and polyester prices are down, at least stable. Energy cost is coming down, and probably in April, our energy tariff will come down again. We're so close to the US, we're 5 days away from Miami by ship. And our industry is heavily investing in new equipment, new technology. Our industry is not afraid of innovating. We have the most productive labor force in the region, not the cheapest, but the most productive, willing to do whatever it takes, innovating all the time. And we see great opportunities for the region that we should be taking advantage of, and we're not. And I really would like to listen to IT and Señor David, because, as I said, they chose to be here, and a lot of respect for them for believing in El Salvador.
Okay. David, we've been talking a little bit about El Salvador and different opportunities and also some problems. Maybe you could introduce these issues and maybe 2 main other issues. One, innovation, how that's playing in your firm and your strategies, and training, and how human resources are a vital part of your company and how that is coming up in El Salvador. No, for you.
Our group has been investing in the region since 1994. We currently employ about 6,000 spread out into 3 different countries, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and El Salvador, and going into Haiti very fast. And last December, we made a decision to make the big leap over Pacific, and we have operations in Vietnam now. Looking back, I call it CAFTA 1.0, first generation CAFTA. Before that, I called our region most likely about 80 to 90% dum-dum factories, which means there were cut pieces brought in from the United States. All we did was just assemble it and put it in the box. There was no thinking done, no innovation done. It was just arcane production line. Now, fast forward, for 10 years during the CAFTA, our region has invested heavily into automation, heavily into new technology. For example, our company has invested in digital printing. Obviously, 4 or 5 years ago, there was not opportunity there because the machines were very, very obsolete, and there was no digital printing available that was affordable. So fast forward, we have made that investment. And by investing into hardware, we needed software investment, which is computer software, but I call this software too, human beings, human resource, because it's soft. And we have made many, many investment into the human resource. We were lacking pattern makers in the region because, once again, we were 807 bird beginning, right? So we didn't have that capability. So currently in Texas, we are training our own pattern makers, and we are flying in professors from Columbia. For 1 week, he stays in El Salvador to train them, and she flies back to Colombia. In 3 weeks, they train by video conferencing. All this training adds up to one thing. We're preparing for the future and the impact of TPP. I asked Jonathan how many free trade agreements are going on. I am not concerned with TPP. I'm more concerned about uncertain bilateral free trade agreement that is going to affect the region, and we don't even know it right now. That's what bothers me at night, because how can you predict free trade agreement that has nothing to do with business other than the geopolitics? Our businessman could predict and forecast machine investment, human resource investment, but when there's a geopolitics involved and free trade agreements are geared toward geopolitics, checking Chinese, for example, right now, and some parts of the countries are getting more incentive than the other countries. So those things are very worrisome, but the reason why we keep investing is we love the region. Why? Some panelists suggest that we're close to the market. I agree on that term, but I also like to point out our 4 countries who are very heavily textile-driven: Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador. Look at the map. From here to Guatemala is about a 3-hour drive. Honduras and Nicaragua is very nearby. If we could monetize this proximity and supply chain, shorten it amongst ourselves, can you imagine what we could do as a region? Instead of everybody owning digital printing machine, let one region run that digital printing, one region do fashion styling, pattern making, one region just go into production, and we synergize what we do best for our particular countries. So that's what one future vision that I have. Look at El Salvador. About 5 years ago, we didn't have too many electric automatic cutting machines. Now we probably have the most in the region within that short amount of time. And obviously the next technology is digital printing, and that needs to be a hub. Just like we have a synthetic hub with IT and everybody, we need to have a hub of digital printers. And we need to have a pattern maker. We need to have a hub of all the new ideas and fashion institutes that could help us in our own business.
IT, you're in the synthetic cluster, a part of it, a very important part. Impressed me that you have a company back in South Africa, in South Korea, and then in the US and in El Salvador. And that struck me and said, why El Salvador? Why is it a part of this integration that you're doing? And are we competitive? Do we have energy costs that are competitive? Are they coming down at the right time or not? How do you compare it with South Korea, the US, with us?
Well, obviously we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for CAFTA. Our investment was first made in the US, and we were making products and shipping down to Central America in the beginning. And because of our strategy, we always wanted to be next to our customer. And we started looking at Central America for investing this synthetic yarn production. And the main reason we decided to come to Salvador was because of the energy cost, actually. It started as energy cost. It was between 7 to 7.5 cents when we were looking at back in 2006. And also, the government was very supportive, pro-business. We felt very comfortable working with the government of Salvador at that moment. And the biggest advantage we have to come down to Salvador was the people willing to work hard, fast learning, appreciating the jobs that we were bringing into this country. All those three factors made us decide to invest in Salvador. Over the years, we made $45 million investment in Salvador, which was the biggest investment we made in any of our investing outside of Korea. And synthetic cluster was definitely a great idea. And before I mention about synthetic cluster, I want everybody to agree that textile is the answer for Salvador. I mean, I don't know how many people realize a company like Samsung or LG or even Japanese company like Toyota or so a lot of major companies started as a textile company and then bring the country without, I mean, Salvador does not have petroleum like Saudi Arabia, right? We wouldn't be working about textile mills. So the best we have is our people of Salvador. And textile is the #1 engine to create jobs and make this country a better country to live. So in that sense, the synthetic cluster really worked great for Salvador, and also not only cluster of Salvador, the Central America as a whole, synthetic cluster really worked. You can see from the number how much synthetic garment was able to be exported out of this region. So, but we have to look at this moment, does every business environment, the investment environment, anything got better? So that's the challenge we have to face. I mean, the people we still have the best people in the region, but the energy cost is, I think you remember I was talking about energy the whole time, like 3-4 years ago at the Forotex. Yes, because of the petroleum price coming down, energy cost is better than 22 cents we were paying. Now we're down to like 12, but still, that energy cost is double of what I'm paying in North Carolina. So we still have challenge in the cost of energy. It's not just the cost of energy. The thing most important for my yarn production is the quality of energy that country can provide. The quality of energy is far away from what we really need to make best quality product. So that's the challenge that we have to face. And another big challenge we have to go through is we don't feel the government is pro-business and helping more investment to come in. And you can look at last 3 years, I haven't heard a single major investment, whether it's textile or other sectors, big news about big investment made in this country. I mean, there's got to be a reason why there's no more huge investment. I mean, we are committed. We are already here, so we're still keep investing. I mean, we're upgrading our machines, bringing new technologies, but I see a big hurdle of bringing new players, new investment into the country. So I'm saying this because our synthetic cluster is great, but I feel like we need to be bigger. I mean, we are growing. I'm producing more yarn than ever before, but it's a small organic growth. But we need more players and to make this cluster better for our customers and our brands, okay? I mean, everybody wants to shop, go shopping at the biggest mall with so many great stores. I mean, we feel like we're a meaningful cluster, but we're not big enough. I mean, I go to brand supplier meetings, the conferences, they talk about we'll have more business to this hemisphere. I mean, we have to ask ourselves, are we really ready to take more business? I mean, we need more investment and make our customer excited about shopping in this cluster. So that's the challenge that we're looking at.
Okay. Javier, do you share that view? Do you think that there are other things that we should be doing to try to improve our cluster and try to get more investors to come over to El Salvador and the region?
Well, of course, Luis, but let me go back to one thing. When we go to Washington trying to influence decision makers, they keep telling us that we're not taking advantage of CAFTA. When we go talk to our government, they keep saying, we don't need CAFTA. And most people don't realize that CAFTA was a lifesaver for the region. At the time, some of you may remember, Chinese goods were cheaper than our goods, even after paying duties in the US. And at the time, the US eliminated the quotas. The Chinese took over the shoe market, the toy market, the apparel market. So CAFTA was a lifesaver at the time. And those of us who were around at the time, if you wanted to sell garments, remember there was CBI, the Caribbean Basin Initiative. If you wanted to sell garments in the US duty-free, you had to use US yarn and fabric. So if you needed to produce certain fabric and you required 19 singles cotton yarn count, you couldn't find someone to produce it for you. You could buy only 18 singles or 20 singles. Nobody would sell you 19 singles. And if you wanted half of a container, nobody would sell you half a container. And if you wanted it for next week, you had to wait 4 weeks. So the leading times for our region were really long. CAFTA allowed us to integrate the textile business with the apparel business. We, at the time, the textile sector sold mostly in the region and in Mexico and other countries. And we could not supply those apparel manufacturers who were exporting to the US because of rules of origin. With CAFTA, everything changed, and it allowed us to integrate not only the textile and the apparel sector, but also to integrate the whole supply chain regionally, mostly within the countries of the Northern Triangle, Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. And now, if you want a specific yarn, we can produce that yarn from you, and you can have the fabric sample made in 3 days. And you could be shipping garments, samples to the US in 5 days. So CAFTA allowed us to be more competitive, allowed us to shorten the lead times. Our customers used to buy big lots of inventory from China at cheap prices. And they had to carry inventory and pay warehousing, insurance, and financing expenses. And then they would have to take markdowns and big sales to get rid of the merchandise. Now our customers can rely on us because they don't need to carry inventory. They can buy from us. We can supply just in time. We can monitor what's selling and what's not selling, and we can produce what is selling. So our customers don't need to carry inventory. And that's one of the greatest advantages that we can offer our customers in the US. Shortened lead times, competitive prices. Our own industry is also complying with sustainability. Countries in Asia are not. We're recycling water usage. We're using solar energy. We have invested in biomass boilers. I mean, we are into sustainability, and that is a big issue now. Water is a big issue worldwide, and there are a lot of advantages with CAFTA. We really get concerned when we hear someone say, let's join TPP, because we're still fighting TPP. We go to Washington, and we're still fighting TPP, and we can hear voices in the region saying, let's join TPP. At least wait until they pass TPP. And those who want to join TPP are usually those at the end of the supply chain, those who want to buy raw materials from all over the world. But they don't see that without the supply chain, the regional supply chain that we have, even importing raw materials from other countries, they would not be as competitive. By having all these new investments in the region, we have made the region more competitive. You have fabric suppliers, yarn suppliers, carton suppliers, you have plastic bag suppliers, you have care labels, price tags. All those materials you can find in the region now, and that's due to CAFTA. Let's not break CAFTA. Let's not change the rules. At least if you want to take advantage of the CAFTA benefits, you have to invest in the region. A free trade agreement is not only to import cheap goods, it's to create new jobs. It's to help our people have a better life. It wouldn't make a difference if we can import all the cheapest goods from all over the world if our people don't have enough income to buy those goods. So a free trade agreement has to be good for the countries that are signatory to the free trade agreement. And in the case of CAFTA, if you want to take advantage of CAFTA, invest in the region.
David, you told us that you are starting your business also in Asia, in Vietnam. I would say that's because you're looking to TPP. And so what's your view between CAFTA and TPP and what Javier has just said?
Well, I'm in a particularly awkward position because Javier and IT we are all involved in textile sector, but they're heavily upstream. I'm heavily downstream. So obviously from where I stand, I would like to have more option. But having said that, using the CAFTA treaty and using short supply list, meaning some of my customers want particularly looking reflective tape, and it's got spandex in it, and that only is 10% of the garment, but 90% is bought here. So I'm using the CAFTA treaty standard to buy majority of here, but particularly the reflective tape are not produced here. So I'll have to import from Hong Kong, Asia, or Europe. So that hurts me a little bit because when they put the duty on, it's not enticing, so we lose that program. So my job is to use the CAFTA as much as possible and retain as much as production in this region. Now, the reason why we invest in Vietnam is obviously we want to hedge our bets. Whatever happens here, it happens. Whatever happens there, it happens, right? You made the most of it. I have no excuses. As a businessman, return on investment is what we're looking at. And by the way, Vietnam is far, far light years away from compliance law. We are in this region more compliant, and we have been trained past 10 years because of the CAFTA treaty. We know how to work the compliance. In Vietnam, I give them another 5 good years to clean up their act because it's not clean yet. Many governance, government getting into business, and also transshipments are not clean. And you know, I hate to say it, you know, last month when I was there, I saw a policeman stop a guy and he was whipping him on the street. You don't want to see those kind of things. But the reason why we went and invested there is also, you know, diversify. And we're going to Haiti also to diversify. So whatever happens, we're going to make the most of the free trade agreement. Like I said, there's many free trade agreements floating around. Right now, Korea is in process. They're in third phase already. They were in San Francisco 2 weeks ago, third phase amongst 6 Central American countries. And I believe that free trade agreement with Korea and Central America will be probably passed in December sometime. So many things are happening other than the TPP. So I see a lot of good things with CAFTA, like I just said. But like Javier said, you know, we have to do our homework, meaning we have to invest and not just sit on our, you know, behind and let the world pass us forward. Because always we have a beautiful thing. The second generation CAFTA, I think it's gonna look a lot beautiful than the first generation. Because first generation, they did the heavy lifting. With the heavy lifting of the investment, now all we have to do is just keep the momentum going. And I think we have a good thing going.
IT, if we're looking for the next 10 years, and we want this momentum to really go forward for the next 10 years, what would you change in El Salvador? What would be your recommendations to Salvadorians and for the government and for people like Javier that have an influence here as one of the main leaders in the private sector? What would you say that we need to do so as to be more competitive and attract more investors for the next 10 years?
Wow, that's a big question. I've been trying to make this cluster bigger, so I've talked to several major players in Asia to invest in this region. And because of the TPP, we always comes down to Vietnam versus CAFTA. So in that sense, a lot of time, Vietnam becomes more attractive. And those people doesn't really understand Central America much. I mean, we are here, so we know this Central America, but without knowing too much about this region, just Vietnam looks much more attractive. And another thing is investing in the US is another competition. Actually, in my case, we ended up investing more in the US than CAFTA for many reasons. US they're really, the state, the city, they're really serious about creating more jobs. There's incentives. I mean, they even changed the local regulation in 2 weeks to have our new investment in North Carolina. I mean, that was, they blew my mind how they were supportive and pro-business, and they were committed to create more jobs for their countries. And the other thing we're seeing is, I think United States is no longer rich anymore. I mean, there's more people willing to work. I mean, they want even hard jobs. I mean, so the business environment in the U.S. investment environment is getting much better. So we're actually competing with U.S., Vietnam, and CAFTA, that were to invest, right? I mean, for me to advise, just my personal opinion, to make Central America, El Salvador, more attractive, of course, I have to say the cost of energy and the quality of energy is very important. The stability, consistency of the government is very important. We need pro-business government. I mean, we deal with aduanas, immigration, labor departments every day. It just makes us miserable, how inflexible. I mean, I think the government has to change the perspective, paradigm. Instead of looking, everybody's cheater, everybody's smuggling. I mean, you can't make 99% of the company who wants to do the business legitimate. I mean, just because of that 1% who's cheating, you cannot make the whole industry difficult to work, right? So that needs to be changed. And those are some of the examples that we really believe that Salvador can become a really good investment in the going future. I mean, we have the best people in the region, and it's a pity that we didn't grow as much. We're still growing, but I think we have a much more potential when there's a right support from the government and the right the cooperation in the industry comes in. I think we have a great future in the CAFTA.
Yes.
I want to expand on what IT said. We are not afraid of competing with any other country, but we have to compete under the same rules. We're competing with China. We can compete with Vietnam, but Vietnam has about 40-something subsidies on exports, so has a minimum wage really low. They even manipulate the currency exchange to make their goods cheaper. They have state-owned companies. And there are things that that the U.S. has to include in a free trade agreement with Vietnam to make sure that they comply with the same rules that we comply under CAFTA. That's all that we've been asking the U.S. every time we go to Washington. We ask them, let's play by the same rules. The U.S. has 29 free trade agreements. All of them have the same rules of origin, strict rules of origin. TPP started with a flexible rule of origin. So we've been insisting that if Vietnam wants to take advantage of free trade agreement, they have to play by the rules that we all play. And expanding on what IT said, I think the most important thing that we ask our governments is trust, confianza. If there is no climate for investment, nobody's going to invest. And you lose that trust when you don't do what you say you're going to do. You lose that trust when you change the rules every Thursday. We have the legislature here meeting every Thursday, and we keep our fingers crossed that they will not come up with a new law, with a new tax. How are you going to invest in a country where all of a sudden you have a new tax in the middle of the year? We've had 22 new taxes in the last 6 years. So the only thing that we ask our government is trust. Let's work together. And another thing, we don't want them to become obstacles. They should be facilitators. And IT said it right. I mean, if they think we are all crooks, then they will propose things to control crooks. But we are not all crooks. So I'm going to say this in Spanish because I have to make sure that the government gets it the way I'm saying it. So I ask the translator to please bear with me. Nuestro llamado al gobierno es para que trabajemos juntos y desarrollemos un clima de confianza. Nosotros no pedimos subsidios ni pedimos favores. Lo que pedimos es que nos dejen trabajar, que no sean un obstáculo, porque todas las ventajas que nos dio CAFTA las estamos perdiendo por problemas internos, no solo en nuestro país, en los países vecinos. ¿De qué sirve que estemos a 5 días de Miami si la aduana se le cae el sistema o la aduana se va en huelga y se acumulan 30 kilómetros de furgones? Y cuando se resuelve, la aduana de Guatemala se ve en huelga. Nosotros sabemos vender, we know how to sell a shirt. We know how to sell 1 million shirts. But if we lose the boat to Miami, that's it. We're going to lose millions of jobs in the region. So we ask our governments to work with us in trying to be more competitive, in trying to eliminate the constraints to competitiveness. Because we are not afraid of competing with anybody as long as we have the government on our side and not against us, and as long as the other countries play by the same rules.
David, what I've been hearing by listening.
Mr. President.
What I've been hearing over the past few days that I've been talking to some of you and some other people is the textile industry is quite strong over here, but it's like getting to a peak point where growth is much slower than before, and that it needs to be reactivated, and we need new investments, and we need to be more competitive, and we need to clear up all these rules and everything. So what would be your recommendation? I mean, Javier has been very clear. I've heard you speak very clearly also over the past few days, but maybe you can share your views also about this.
Well, imagine that when you're writing alphabet letter S, it's like this. So you start from the bottom, and then you peak, and then it flattens out. We need another S to continue our growth, CAFTA second generation. But to do that, our region has to cooperate and consolidate our borders. It has to open up. For instance, when I'm standing in that 20 kilometers line from Guatemala to El Salvador, I see the vegetable trucks, they have free pass. Something like that should be implemented in textile. Where we have the textile, speed to market is very, very important to us, just like the vegetable, right? Every day it's delayed in the border is affecting our future growth and future investment. So every border amongst our 4 countries, we should have a free border in textile. Number 2, obviously, the aduana is always a problem, but if you could cooperate all these 4 countries' aduana, coordinate them, and start working as, hey, exporters are our heroes in our 4 countries, not criminals. The criminals are the ones out there killing people. We are creating jobs here. We are trying to make a living here. And our roots are very deep here. This is my 3rd adopted country. I was born in Korea, so by birth I'm Korean. Immigrated to the United States, lived there for 20 years. United States citizen, lived here for 20 years. It's an adopted country, but I love El Salvador and the region surrounding it. So how do we make the policies? The government has to make the policies. Why are they implementing money laundering laws when we don't have even a single penny to cash? Everything is done by wire transfer or checks. Why do we get involved in that? We need to have an exception to the rule, which is textile industry is exception to the rule. We have nothing to do with it. We are not narco traffic. So if you keep adding or making new laws that has nothing to do with our industry, it's just putting one layer after another to slow down the process. So everything is about speed. If you guys have a chance to visit our companies, everything, even the testing lab, the training center, the digital printing, is geared towards speed to market. Every little thing, even the office setup is speed to market. How do we speed it up? But we as a business people are trying to speed everything up. As a government policy, everybody's trying to slow it down, so we have this tug of war. So we need to stop doing that. And by the way, if government could cooperate with us, we could invest probably in the next 3 years another 50%, create another 50% in my sector. And this is not funny numbers. We are going to commit that kind of return on investment. And all we need is the government to support that policy.
I want to add one more thing. I can't say enough about how important speed to market is. I mean, we have so much inefficiency in this industry. I mean, we just mentioned about how government is making us difficult, but also in the private sector, I want to talk about the logistics issues. I mean, we say we have a proximity and speed to market, but for us to ship container from Central America to West Coast California takes 14 days. The same container from China to California also takes 12 days, 14 days. We don't have advantage there. I mean, it should not take 14 days. I mean, the logistics company, shipping liners needs to understand we cannot, that's gonna make us less competitive. And also, To the East Coast, we definitely have advantage because of we don't have to go through the canal, right? Panama Canal. We are faster, but the freight from Asia to US is cheaper than we ship from here to the US. I mean, the freights are very expensive. Another inefficiency we have is the air couriers, like DHL, FedEx. I mean, for us to make new product, develop samples back and forth, we need that to be fast. This is the only country we have to go all the way to the airport. It takes forever to get that sample, small fabric sample. It should come automatically. Those are the inefficiencies we're seeing. And lastly, I really think Central America needs to have a better road system. I don't think Avianca will like this, but we need a freeway. Guatemala, Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua. It shouldn't take more than 3 hours by car. I mean, how many containers are getting hijacked because of this bad road system? And how many accidents we have to go through with the bad roads? So if there's a visionary leaders in the Central America to really consolidate this economy, we need a great freeway system, that free pass border. That's going to help us in our industry and make us more competitive.
Let me just open for 1 or 2 questions. Is there anyone that wants to ask something? Totally clear?
Luis,
Let's give them
if I
a
have
round of
meeting-
applause.
if I have a minute,
Okay.
I need to qualify one of my statements.
Okay.
There are some public officials working together with us, mostly from the Ministry of Economics. I really want to thank them. We really enjoy working with them and appreciate the job they do. They are honest people with integrity, professionals working hard to help our sector. Some of them are here, and I would really appreciate if we give them a hand of applause.
Thank you very much.